Living in a big city is a hassle, especially since the lockdown. It feels like going anywhere with people is dangerous. I just don't see how I'm going to get to work safely, I told my mum via Skype. Why don't you just order an Uber? They're considerably cheaper than a taxi and much faster than the subway. But the best part is that there are typically not any other passengers when you go. You can request that, she told me. I never really thought twice about it since it seemed like solid advice. So I downloaded the app and got a ride in only 5 minutes. My driver was a balding 40-something man named Brian, and he made casual small talk with me as we drove. I was mostly checking my phone. When we got to my destination, I thanked him and went about my way. I was 17 minutes early. Not bad. The next time I needed to go somewhere, I tried the app again and noticed there was an Uber only 2 minutes away. I was in a hurry, so I requested one, and once again it was Brian behind the wheel. You must live around here too, huh? I joked the third time we saw one another. It was raining and I needed to get home for a date. You know, he's really no good for you, Celeste, Brian replied. I frowned, not recalling that I'd ever mentioned that I was going for a date. Something felt off. It suddenly occurred to me that it seemed strange that it was the same driver again, especially since I was crossing an area I didn't normally go to. Was he following me? Thanks for the tip, I told him, with a smile as he dropped me off. Stay safe, Brian answered. Gave me another weird vibe. I drank wine with my date and we watched Saturday Night Live. Then when it was time for him to go, he said he would call an Uber because he had one too many martinis. I was laughing at Kevin Hart on screen, so I didn't pay it much attention as I walked him to the door. Then I saw at the edge of a street. It was the same Uber vehicle that picked me up earlier. Brian again? Maybe you should stay here, I told my date, feeling uneasy about the whole thing. I would love to, but I have work tomorrow, he said, kissing my cheek. The Uber driver gave this mean look as he got into the car. I told him to text me, and he promised he would, so I stayed by the phone and waited for a reply. Made it home safe finally came, and I drew a sigh of relief. I was just being paranoid. We should have stayed, I texted back with a wink. You could come over here, he replied. I thought about it and decided to be bold. I grabbed a tight dress, changed and hailed another Uber. As soon as I got in the vehicle, I told the driver where I was going and texted him again, on my way. Then I heard the familiar ping of his phone. It was in the front seat, and I saw Brian looking back at me as I looked down at the cushions in the car and realised there was blood on them. The door's locked. Where to? The driver said with a smile.
Last week, my town announced that they were starting a new energy-efficient program, which would include a few self-driving cars. I've seen these things a few times on the internet, but never really thought that they would catch on, to be honest. Some political figure must have got a big boost in their budget, I told my wife as we watched the news conference on it. Honestly, I figured it would just be a phase, and that in my small life as a hardware store manager, I wouldn't even have to worry about the things. Until last Tuesday. My car was in the shop, and I needed to get across town for a soccer game. You promised, Theo, you would be there, my wife said, when I tried to offer an excuse. I ruffled my hair and realized she was right. And while I couldn't afford a taxi, maybe I could rent one of those automated Ubers. Surely a machine would be able to get me across town without a problem, I reasoned. I got in the car and used my smartphone to type in the address. Supposedly, the computer AI would then put that in the GPS, and I would be on my way with no problem. Immediately, it drove in the opposite direction, and I sighed in frustration. I didn't have time for an alternate route, I thought. It didn't get better from there. Instead, it zoomed through traffic. It nearly got me in a fender bender 3 times. It was insane. I want to get out, now, I ordered. Then the doors locked.
I cannot allow that to occur,
a computerized voice answered. I nervously tried to make a call, thinking there had to be a glitch in the system. But then something seemed to be blocking my calls.
Your destination will be up ahead.
Like shit it will, I said as I took out my Swiss Army knife, and tried to plunge it into the circuit boards. The robotic voice said something else as we moved between traffic, and I was beginning to realize that this car seemed to be trying to kill me. "What the f***?" I shouted as I tried again to cause a malfunction. I heard the roar of an 18-wheeler outside and said a few more cuss words that I regret as we slid under the massive truck and the self-driving car got on the highway. Then I heard the roar of police sirens and my heart sank. But the car kept going, 60 miles per hour, then 70.
This is the end of your journey.
I braced for impact. It was heading straight toward a building. As soon as it hit, I blacked out. When I woke up, I was in the hospital, and the police were keeping me from having visitors. I could hardly breathe or even move a muscle, but I demanded I see my wife. When she came in, she looked so angry with me. "Did you think I wouldn't find out?" she asked bitterly. Then she showed me the messages that had been sent to her phone remotely. Somehow the car had known I was planning to leave her. The police told me I would have a few moments before I was charged with vehicular manslaughter, but I didn't really have much of a statement to make, except that I just got f***ed over by a f***ing car. Apply today, starting at $19 an hour, including tips. I really needed the money. My son's birthday was coming up, and the website said I could schedule my own hours. Training wasn't hard, but then after orientation, one of the online agents warned me to watch out for irate customers. In this business, a review can make or break you. Customer satisfaction is number one. But just remember, sometimes people like to jerk your chain. Let us know if you have any problems. The first few weeks driving for Uber were smooth sailing. I was getting positive feedback from all my customers and making good money. But it didn't last. One day I got a notification that said someone had left me a 1-star review. What they said shocked me. "Marty is the worst driver the company has. A dead person could do better. In fact, it would be better if he was dead." I immediately reported it as abuse. I couldn't recall a single customer that had a problem with me. The company said they would look into it and advised me to keep my eyes and ears open. The next day I was on edge, careful to make sure I accepted every ride. Then I got another bad review, this one even more scathingly and scary. "It's shocking this company is letting him drive. I can't wait to end the suffering of every person in the car with him. The world will be a better place when he is gone." This time I took it upon myself to check and see where the review was coming from. Supposedly the customer had just been in my Uber, but how could that be? I hadn't seen a customer in hours. Another ping came on my phone, and I realized I had a new ride request. It was coming from a nearby graveyard. Nervously, I pulled up alongside the cemetery and looked around. It didn't look like anyone was here. Another ping. It was a new review, this one positive. Finally, he took me where I needed to go. I swear if it wasn't going to work, I was going to have to take matters into my own hands. I looked at the tombstones again and felt a weird twist in the bottom of my stomach. Was this implying that I had just given a ride to a ghost? It seemed impossible, and for the next few days I shrugged it off. But then I got a few more requests to the same cemetery. I ignored them again and started to get bad reviews. Some were even threatening. "You need to start listening to what we are telling you and obey your calling. Think of your son." I immediately responded to the next ride and let them go to the graves, desperate to determine the truth. As we drove up, I felt brave and dared to ask the ghostly passenger I couldn't see a single question. "Why are you making me be the one to do all this?" The door opened on its own, and I thought I saw a shadowy figure stand there. It looked like the Grim Reaper entered my Uber. Which would you rather be, ferried or ferryman? I swallowed a gulp of air and struggled to find my voice. "Right. Where to, boss?" I didn't intend for this to be a permanent position, but it's looking to be the death of me after all. Thanks for listening. If you enjoy these stories, be sure to subscribe to the podcast and check out some more of my episodes here.